that, let's pray. Dear God, I thank you for this time to come together and to worship you and to learn about the order that you've created. God, I just pray that you help reveal your truth today in my words and speak your life. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. So, we have Numbers, be counted. And we have a lot of just math and numbers in these chapters. And sometimes it even gets repeated. And today, we're talking about chapters 1 through 7, which I'm calling Order in the Camp, because these first 7 chapters are really about where everyone is, how many people there are. It's all about the organization as a whole. So, let's jump into chapter 1. There we go. Chapter 1, numbering the soldiers. And this one actually is kind of structured out by the verses. Each group of verses is kind of split up. And it kind of does move from one topic to another as you go through the verses. First 3 verses, the order is given to Moses to take a census of all of the fighting men. After that, leaders are appointed from the tribe to assist him in taking this census. Now, today, censuses are taken to understand sociology and political things that are going on, okay? In Bible days, the only reason you took a census was because you were making an army. So this is why they haven't taken a census yet. They took one after they left Egypt because they just wanted to know how many people got out. But they haven't. This is a year later. And they haven't done anything with it since, and now they're taking a true census because they need to know what the army size is. The census is taken in verses 17 to 46, totaling 603,550 fighting men. If you say that each family has a wife and 2 kids, you are already over 2 million. 2 million people. And this is not including the non-Israelites who left with them. Because the Bible states that there was even Egyptians, there was other slaves and other people who were marginalized, and even Egyptians who saw how powerful God was and left with them into the wilderness. There's a specific age range. I don't remember what it is off the top of my head. Yep. And finally, the last bit is explaining why the Levites have not been counted in the census. Later on, they're counted in a separate census, but at this point, they're not counted in the census. Why? Because they're not part of the army. Technically, they're the most important part of the army because at the very front of the army in any battle, up until they lose the Ark of the Covenant, the Levites are standing at the front with the Ark of the Covenant and blowing horns. Without weapons. That's not a safe job. So there, and it specifically says that their duty is to defend the tabernacle, which is the duty of most of the Levites. In a battle situation. But they are exempt from this first draft, basically, is what this census is. They call it a census. It's a draft. It's saying this is our fighting men, and if we have to fight, you're part of it. What do we learn about God in this first chapter? Does anybody see anything that they learn about God in this first chapter? He is very orderly, and this literally goes for every single one of these. He is so orderly in this chapter. He knows Israel intimately. He knows it. God is having them count all the men. God already knows how many men there are. Um, he is making this census to call forth an army. He is the destroyer. He is the one who is going to come in and wipe out all these evil nations that are within the promised land promised to Abraham and his descendants. He is the destroyer. And when we see at the very end, he is also covered. When it talks about him with the Levites, he is covered. He is not visible to everyone. He is. And that is a special kind of orderly. Orderly is everything's kind of in its place. Strategic is everything is in its place and the purpose and timing for it is exactly known. Okay? I can have everything organized, but if I don't know when and where each of them are going to be used, it's not strategic yet. If I have it organized in such a way that I know I'm going to go from this tool to this tool to this to this to this tool for this specific job, and they're all lined up on a fence, so I could just set and reach for the next one, that's being strategic. That's not just orderly, that's the next step above. He is faithful. And I'm going to probably show something even more so with the strategy that he's doing that might have went over my head if I didn't have a reference. And so I was like, whoa, that does make so much sense. What about people? What do we see about people? There's leaders and there's heads of houses. There's two different groups kind of placed here. And people have those different responsibilities. Some of them are more responsible than others. They have more that they are supposed to reign over. The first group of men that are go with Moses, they're to assist him. And so you have leaders, and even the leaders are assisting. They're not the ones who are going to overall do all the work. They are assisting, and even Moses, he is just assisting the plan that God has set forth. I think we see more about who men are in this at the very end, because for most of it, they're just numbering out the warriors. At the very end, when it starts talking about the Levites, it talks about what they are supposed to do. And you actually eventually kind of see this with, if you look closely at how he's separating out the rest of the people. But the people are called to guard the weaker that are there. They have a special responsibility to guard the weaker and to guard the important things that they're carrying with them. They are fruitful. It ends up working out well. All right. Observations. Anybody have any observations about anything in this chapter? So, there's a couple of things that I noticed. One is a little less than the other, but I kind of made a point to it earlier. They have numbered all the fighting men here now, so we know that there's 2 million. Now, that's just a sheer number of people. Like, that's just a massive amount. Until you remember that for 40 years here, they're going to be wandering the wilderness with no source of food except the manna that God provides every day. The sheer amount of bread raining from heaven you would need every day to feed 2 million people is just insane. So we talked last week about how they never actually took a Sabbath year. These people who were wandering in the wilderness would have, because they had already seen the fact that God could provide for a year. He provided for 40. So what's a year? But they never did it, which is just crazy. I guess actually the bigger thing that I noticed was actually in the next chapter here. So, but I'm just going to write the sheer amount of people. Is there anything else that kind of jumped out to anybody?
I had something jump out to me. So when we were reading through Leviticus, the Lord said every time you take a census, they were going to have to pay when they took a census. But in this, I didn't see any. I see the instruction to take a census, but I do not see the instruction of taking in pay. So that's my observation and / question.
The only thing I do know there is that the order of some of the events here in Numbers is just a little weird. So I know that like chapters like 9 through 11 or something actually happened before chapter 1. So it might be something in there. I am not sure of that off the top of my head. I do know that very soon after this, they're going to consecrate the temple and bring a gift with that. I don't know if that's tied to that at all. That's the only gift that's going to be mentioned in this these 7 chapters. So, yeah, that would be something that would have needed to be done. It also could be that it was already set in stone that this was law, and so it happened. They just were like, we already said that this could happen every time that we do a census, so we don't need to record it in the text. So I don't know whether they chose just to say, hey, we don't need to record this, or it's just order of events, which is a little weird. There's like a little bit that's like shifted as to where it actually happens, when it actually happens. Or if it's just like all these events from 1 through 7 are so close that it's tied in with the offering given in 7. There's something, God knows. I don't know that one off the top of my head. There's a lot of different possibilities it could be. So I'm going to write census tax with a question mark. All right. Was there anybody else who had any observations? Mm-hmm. Yes. Over, I think it's only like a couple of generations. It's not a lot. They just multiply like crazy. It's insane how big these families end up getting. Which, by the way, if you look, there is 12 tribes listed and then Levi. A lot of people don't realize is that Joseph, as the chosen son, technically he's not the firstborn, but he's given the firstborn rights. He receives a double portion. So Joseph isn't listed; his 2 sons are, and each of them gets a portion. So because of that, you end up with 12 tribes and Levi, which technically makes 13. Just a odd little thing that ends up coming up. All right. My application was count yourselves among the warriors of God. So when we are going through how God is organizing everything, he counts all his people as warriors, as part of his fighting army. And that is the same for us. Different enemy, same effect. When you have jumped onto the church and the faith, you have become part of the census for the army. God's holy army that is fighting not a battle of blood, but a spiritual battle. Count yourself among God's army. I think I grabbed the same Maybe. I'll grab a second one. All right, on to chapter 2. Keep moving here. Chapter 2, arranging the camp. So, first 2 chapters are about the 12 tribes. 3 and 4 are about Levi, and then it goes to some broader over the whole nation of Israel. So this is more like a part 2 to part 1. So in chapter 2, he takes the groups that he has numbered and he arranges them into place. Tribes are grouped in order to where they should camp directionally around the tabernacle. Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun camped to the east of the tabernacle. Reuben, Simeon, and Gad to the south. Joseph's sons and Benjamin to the west. Dan, Asher, and Naphtali to the north. A couple of things that are going on here. Number one, these are actually grouped by who their mom is. Because not all of the kids came from Rachel or Leah. It just kind of happened that some of the maidens had some kids of Jacob's, and they were still counted among the 12 tribes. So they're actually grouped with the tribes they are closer with. So like Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun all share a mom. Joseph's sons and Benjamin all share a mom. And so they're much closer as tribes than they are with some of the other tribes. The tribes are to create and display banners of their tribes. They're to create a symbol of what their tribe is. And the Levites are to dwell around the tabernacle. And actually, we're going to get an even more specified version of how that looks in 2 chapters. But I want to read a little bit about what I saw here, because there's actually something extra crazy. And then I realized, that actually makes even more sense. And it goes with the directions that these people are living in, okay? So, I need page 23. Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun, all descendants of Leah, camped to the east with a total of 186,400 men. Since the entrance to the tabernacle was there, it was important to have the largest number of soldiers protecting it. And the other crazy thing, this is also the order that they march. So the largest number of men are leading the entire march. So if they come upon an enemy, they're the first ones to fight. So they're at the entrance. They're also, which direction are you going to be marching? The Promised Land's to the east. Kind of northeast, but it's to the east. So they are the ones in line with the where they're headed as well. Reuben, Simeon, and Gad camped south of the tabernacle with 151,450 men. Ephraim and Manasseh, the descendants of Joseph, and camped west of the tabernacle along with Benjamin, a total of 108,100 men. Thus, all the descendants of Rachel camped together. On the north side of the tabernacle were Dan, Asher, and Naphtali, with 157,600 men. Whenever the camp moved, the Ark of the Covenant went before, carried by the priests. Then the tribes of Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun, followed by the Gershonites and Merarites, which is 2 of the families of Levi, with all the temple pieces. Next came Reuben, Simeon, and Gad, followed by the Kohathites, carrying the temple furnishings. Ephraim, Manasseh, and Benjamin were next. Dan, Asher, and Naphtali brought up the rear. The largest number of soldiers lead and are at the rear. God has perfectly planned this all for a military march of 2 million people. This is just crazy that this is how it's done. And it's so cool of what is going on there. So what do we see about God in this passage? but we see him arranging everything. He's orderly, he's precise. I'll add precise. There's another word with orderly that we haven't gotten yet. Okay, another thing. I want to see, I'm going to ask a question. I think someone will get to this. With where everybody is camping, where is God? He's in the middle. He's in the midst. He's in the middle of his people. He's in their midst. And it goes, so if you would look at the camp, it would be foreigners, Israelites, Levites, the high priest, God. Going from any outside direction in, that would be the order of people you would have. Which is, again, extra cool. A lot of the things that we've kind of already seen are shown here again. His organization, his order. What about man? What do we see about man? What does man do? What is man like in this chapter? They need structure. They need structure. He arranges, they are arranged. They need structure. They do create some things. So they create banners to show off who they to show who they are, both to each other as tribes and to other people. So they create banners. They camp and they set out. God has planned for them a time to rest and camp and a time to set out. And they would always know this by the pillar of fire and smoke. When it would leave, they followed. They would just sound a horn, and everybody had to pick up everything they had as fast as they possibly could. They camp and they set out. I'm going to write directional living here, because that was the big thing I noticed, was that the order in which they lived around it actually made very much sense, both for when they marched and for when they were camped for defensive purposes. Did anybody else notice anything either from what I had shared or from their own reading, just any observations, or even questions about, hey, what's going on here? Okay. It might be something like that as well, too. I know Judah for sure, because he is like the lead brother, and it's like all these crazy things come out of him. But yeah, there could be something along with their names, too, that actually has some kind of meaning there. Yeah. And they were so organized that they could move in a moment's notice. Not just all these people picking up their tents, okay? You also have a massive tent structure that you have built that you have to demolish and take with you. And so there's pillars. There is stone pillars that they are having to load onto carts every time the Lord moves. There's a group of people that's their job, is to take all the heavy boards of the temple and the pillars in the courtyard and move them as they move, which is just, I would not have wanted that job. I will say, I actually would have preferred that one to, there's one group that is not, that what they are carrying is so important, they're not allowed to put it on carts. And so they literally just have to carry it on their backs. They have to, the things like the table for the bread sacrifice and all those, the smaller pieces. But these are still furniture covered in gold. That's not light, and you're just marching with this for long periods of time. So, but yeah, that is a really cool thing that we do see there. By the way, if you notice, when they leave, so the west leaves first, and then it goes around, so west, south, east, and then the north follows in the rear. So they kind of like circle around. So they're kind of doing they made their own traffic circle and they're going around the tabernacle and following Judah out. The first roundabout. God's roundabout. There you go. If I ever do a message on this chapter, I'm going to call it God's roundabout. There you go. Oh, I went a little too fast because we do need our application. And mine is to arrange yourself correctly with those of your banner. Okay, so there's the whole group of God's people. We're all called to be warriors. We're all counted. But then you must arrange yourself accordingly. You are part of a particular group in a particular tribe. And your job is going to be different than a different group's job. Arrange yourself accordingly. You get more accomplished by being obedient. Yeah, there would just be utter confusion. Nothing. I'm going to put that on. I love that. You get more accomplished by being obedient. You get more accomplished by being obedient, especially the more people there are. The more people there are, the more chance there is for confusion and chaos. Okay? So if you have a small church, and this comes with all churches, they get to a lot of times this church stops growing because they have not invested in making sure that they are following and being obedient and following the structure that they need to keep growing. And so they stagnate, or they get happy with how they are, and they just don't keep moving. All right, next we get to just talk about one tribe instead of 12. Yay! So this is the Levites, and God takes a special census of the Levites. Now, again, a census is for military purposes. Levites are militaries, unless you think of the spiritual warfare as a battle. So this is like a census for a separate battle. All the other people, they're going to have to fight a physical battle. These guys are being called into ministry. They have a census for their ministry, and they're going to be fighting a spiritual battle. They are grouped into a couple different things. So first you have the high priest, Aaron, and his family that is set apart. Then you have the role of the Levites is to be the firstborn sacrifice of Israel. There's an interesting thing that they put here is that, and you'll see it in a couple chapters, they are actually at the end of this chapter. So they state that the number of Levites is supposed to cover the number of firstborn sons of Israel. And when they take a census of all the Levite men that are of age, and they take a census of all the people in general, they find that they're a certain amount short. And so at the very end of this chapter, they go through a process of redeeming those extras that they don't have Levites to cover for. Yep, so they go around, they're like, okay, there's this many people that aren't covered one for one by a Levite, and so we need to come up with this much money to give to the temple in order to redeem them, the people that are not covered. In verses 14 to 39, you have the counting of the tribe of Levi, and Levi apparently has 3 sons, and each of his sons is counted separately because each of them has a different job, a job that we'll see in the next chapter. But they're counted separately because God's going to give each of those groups a different job. What do we see about God here? I'm going to put one thing here because I didn't kind of mention it. Right at the beginning, God basically says, these are set apart from me. He is a jealous God. And that is very much shown in how this chapter starts. What else do we see about God, who God is and what he does in this chapter? He values proximity. He wants them to be close. He does. He holds them to a higher standard. Yep. There's a higher responsibility. Which, by the way, I was watching a show the other day, tangent, but one of the best jokes off of with great power comes great responsibility was watching a show. There's a superhero said, with great power comes great paperwork. Which, I mean, if you're knocking down buildings, I guess. Got to go through and sign off all that paperwork for the destruction. But yes, to the point where with that responsibility, there's also extra blessing. They get to live close. To the point where this is also a spot where God says, if anyone gets close, it's your job to kill them. Part of the reason you're living here around the tabernacle is to warn people if they get too close. But yeah, he does all those different things. What do we see about man here? What does man do, or what are they like in this chapter? They divine order. They put forth the order. They're the ones putting it forth. I'm going to put guard tabernacle here because we do see that with the whole, like, don't get too close or otherwise they'll die. And actually, that is the main reason they're supposed to guard the tabernacle. God's like, I don't care if enemies are going to come and try to take me. They won't be able to. What I'm more concerned about guarding-wise is my people getting too close that aren't supposed to be. What else do the people do? Again, these first 4 chapters kind of go back over each other a lot. We do have 2 words that come up a couple times. The Levites are called to serve and minister. That is mentioned a couple of times in this chapter. And if you're wondering if things that go with Levites apply to you, yes, because guess what? There is no priestly line anymore. Everybody who is of the family of God is part of the priestly nation. So you have direct access to God, you're a priest. Which is actually why I think it's weird that the Catholic Church calls their leaders priests, because I'm like, everybody is? Like, not everybody's a pastor, but technically, biblically, everyone's a priest. All right. Does anybody have any observations or questions? I'm going to write redemption price, like what I was mentioning before. They end up with not enough Levites to cover the firstborns, and so they take up this redemption price amongst the people. They even figure out exactly how much each family needs to give to cover this. It's like 5 shekels or something. It's not a very large amount per family, but by the time they're done with every family, they have enough to redeem the people. Aren't you glad that there's not a person that's like a person, not Jesus, who is responsible for, like, he is your one for one for salvation. I'm glad about that. Yeah. There's not a physical tie to my salvation. Like, it is purely spiritual in the New Testament. I don't have to count on anybody else. I don't have to count on a nation taking up a tax just to cover for me. Which they do here, but that doesn't mean they do it throughout the whole history of Israel. And actually what we see with Israel is that often they disregard anything that makes them have to pay or take extra time. Is there any other observations or questions from this chapter of what we looked at? All right, my application is count yourselves among the priests. So, you're a warrior just like the rest of Israel, but you're also a priest. All right, one more Levite chapter, one more ordering camp chapter, and then we get to a couple more topical things. So, for number 4, we have the duties of the Levites. So they have a specific job that they're supposed to do. The rest of the Israelite people, they're to fight. And the Levites, though, are supposed to do something else, something different. They have the duty of transporting and guard duty. They're to guard the tabernacle and the things of the tabernacle, and they're to transport it whenever they move. Each of the families is given a different thing to transport. The Kohathites move the furniture that's in the sanctuary. They move the actual Ark of the Covenant. They move the table with the bread. They move all of the things that are used daily and the actual Ark of the Covenant. However, it states that they are not allowed to move them until Moses and Aaron are done covering everything. They cannot go in and start moving stuff until everything is covered. And they have to be careful not to, they have all of these things are made with holes to put a pole through. So you put a pole through and then you're just able to carry by the pole. To be very careful not to touch the actual piece itself. I don't know if it happened anywhere else, but there's at least one instance recorded where David doesn't realize you're supposed to do this. He has the Ark of the Covenant in the back of an ox cart, which is these are the only people that don't get carts, is the people carrying this stuff. And a dude steadies it and poof, he just dies. Yep, just immediately. So I hope it didn't happen anywhere else. But, I mean, if they weren't paying attention, they're getting a little lazy. It could have happened. The Gershonites transported the coverings and framework of the tabernacle. They have to move all of the cloth and all of the framing pieces, the smaller wood and metal pieces that holds up the frame of this tent. So they have a big job to, take everything down, but what they have is a lot lighter, though that amount of cloth can get pretty heavy. And the Merarites, their job is the pillars and the heavy boards. The pillars in the courtyard and the heavy boards that make up the walls of the tabernacle. And that is what their job is to move. Ithamar, which is one of Aaron's sons, is to supervise the Gershonites and Merarites. Eleazar supervises the Kohathites, and he is also responsible for gathering up all of the sacrificial bread and the sacrificial oil that hasn't been used yet, that was sitting out there. So he's responsible for gathering that up and bringing it with them as well. So, again, he's just kind of dividing up the duties. These are more specific than the duties of the rest of the tribes because they are the ministers. They have a special role amongst the people. What do we see about God here? Actually, I think I misdid my notes earlier. I was supposed to put covered here. God delegates. He wants you to do it. He'll give you the way how, but he's not going to do it for you. A good boss, a good dad, they're not just going to do it for you. They're going to show you how to do it, and then you got to go do it. Your dad can't bat for you in the middle of your little league game, okay? That's not allowed, okay? You got to bat for yourself. Your dad could show you how to bat, but you got to bat for yourself. That would be unfair if the dads were allowed to play, and if that was the case, you just see more and more dads start playing, and then it's not little league anymore, it's dad league. What else do we see about God here? Not only is he covered, he is untouchable. They're not even supposed to look upon him. What about man? What do we see about man here? What does man do, or what are they like in this chapter? God gave them what? Tasks. Yes, God gave them tasks. I actually had taskmaster written for God on here, so I'll actually put that up there. They do tasks. They have specific jobs to do. They have a task to do. They are burdened by that task. It's not an easy task. It's a hard thing to do, even for the amount of people that they have. They are burdened. They are. They have to learn to be efficient. Because not only do they have to take everything down super quick, they also are not in the back of the line for marching. Some of them are at the very front, and the ones that aren't are fairly close. So they have to be very quick. They have to be very efficient at this, which eventually you get to the point where you are. One of the things I always did at Vernell Family Life Church was anytime they did any outdoor events, I always set up all the inflatables for them. Reason why? I learned how to set them up when I was in high school. I worked a job doing a traveling VBS, and that was my job for setup and tear down every single day. When you're setting up and tearing down an inflatable every day, you get really good at rolling that thing up. You also get really good at knowing how to carry it. People don't know how to carry those things. But the same thing goes for, like, I have seen so many people try to carry a massive sheet of drywall, and they do it wrong. And it's just like, you have to know how to carry the drywall. Otherwise, it's going to crack. I am not a construction person. My dad was. I went on a couple jobs with him. That's why I know about it. I am terrible with my hands. What else do we see about the people? Again, these first 4 chapters kind of repeat a lot of things about kind of people's roles.
I have something that might be...
Yes.
It's a mixture between people and observation.
Okay.
But obviously they don't start the service until they're 30 at this point, and they're done at 50. And so seeing that there's a time of preparation, and then there's also a time of quote-unquote retirement.
Yeah. So not only is it, you are very great, and it's this very small amount of even the Levites that get to do this. And it's not even just that. But remember, if there is any defect in a person at all, they're excused from duty. They get to enjoy the benefits of being a Levite without having to perform the true priestly duty. There's other things like moving things around, taking care of the grounds, everything like that. But to actually serve as a priest in the temple, you had to meet very specific requirements. And you're right, there's a period of onboarding and a period of retirement. And hopefully they live to 50. Which, again, I don't think they're really following very well, because how old is Zechariah? He's got to be up there.
Well, the numbers do. I know they do switch because eventually later on they bump the number up to you could enter the service at 25, and then eventually they also change it again where you could enter in at 20 years old.
Okay.
But then I was researching for Zachariah's time, and essentially they would, because they had so many people, the duties were much more split up, and so they would kind of like retire from some of the main things, but they would still do just different, like not so heavy lifting kind of things.
Okay. Yeah. And I mean, weirdly enough, Zechariah, however old he is picked by they would picked by Lot, who would go into the Holy of Holies at that one time in the year, and he gets picked by Lot to do it. But it would have been an honor, and you would have had to have been a pretty high-standing person even to be in that lot to begin with at that point. So I'm going to write ministerial preparation and ages. All right, and my application, which if you end up having one, an application, let me know, is understand your role. Okay, so count yourself among the warriors, count yourself among the priests, understand the group of people that you're supposed to be with, and understand your role. And remember, we're part of a priestly nation, so we do have a specific job. We're not just here to fight the spiritual battle. We have a more specific job. So understand your role. And some are more obvious, like the 5 ministerial roles that are listed by Paul, and some are less so. Some are more focused on just a specific gifting the Holy Spirit. You might be the person that is to be the discerning person over your church. And if you're not stepping up into that role, there's going to be problems because things weren't discerned. All right. So now the last 3 chapters are about the whole camp. These are not about splitting people up. These are topical things about the whole camp. So for chapter 5, we end up with 3 pretty simple things. But the last one is long and a weird doozy. So we have rules about physical defilement, and it is at this point that those who are defiled are taken to the edge of the camp. Rules about interpersonal defilement. So if you get an argument with someone, if you get angry with someone, what is supposed to go on there? Which makes sense, okay? So now that we've got all the camps situated, what happens if someone starts to get diarrhea? What happens if 2 neighbors start arguing with each other? What happens if your wife goes and decides to sleep with someone else, or you think she did? That's the third thing that gets about here is marital defilement, and there is a specific test for marital faithlessness, okay? And this test is weird and has a ton of steps. So I believe this in my book starts at page 36. Okay, so I'm going to read out kind of the list of things here, and then there'll be a little thing at the end. First, for this test of infidelity, the husband brings his wife to the priest at the door of the tabernacle along with a prescribed offering. Second, the priest takes water from the laver and dust from the tabernacle floor and mixes them in a clay vessel. Third, the priest looses the woman's hair, letting the tresses fall as if she was in mourning. A woman's beauty is in her hair, so like it is letting it fall as if she is mourning, she is defiled. Interestingly enough, we'll get to something else that deals with this in the next chapter that isn't as well kind of known when we get to Nazarites. Fourth, the priest puts the wife under oath before God. They do the whole, put your hand on the Bible. Now, please promise you're going to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth. And then announces a curse that is attached to this oath. If you are lying, you will be without child. Fifth, the priest then writes this curse on a scroll washes it in the bitter water, and then the woman drinks the water. Seventh and finally, as the woman drank the water, the priest took the offering from her own hands, so that the husband brings it and puts it in her hands, as if it was presented to the Lord. Now, let's consider some of the issues involved in this ceremony. There is not one record in Scripture that any husband ever used it, or that they ever accused any accused wife asked for it. Perhaps the very existence of this law provided a barrier to adultery and warning that sin would be found out. There are clearly some built-in roadblocks that would make a husband hesitant to rush to a priest and ask for his wife to be tried. To begin with, this is a public event. This is not private. Performed at the door of the tabernacle, and the whole camp could know about it. Would a husband want to expose his marital problems that openly, especially when he couldn't know the results of the trial? Furthermore, what transpired there told something about the husband as well as about his wife. If the husband loved his wife and was deeply hurt by her possible infidelity, why would he want to expose her publicly? But if he didn't love her and only wanted to hurt her, he might be embarrassed and proved wrong. A wise man would think twice before having his wife judged in this way. The husband would have to live with the consequences. If his suspicion was proved wrong, he owed his wife an apology and had to work to rebuild that relationship. Why wasn't he punished in some way for his false accusation? I don't know. If she was found guilty, he had to live with her, wonder who the lover was, and suffer with the physical consequences of the curse and her bad reputation. She could never bear him children, but he still had to provide for her and for any children she had already given him. So, this is laid out there, but it is more of a deterrent than anything else of like, hey, if you get married, like if you really think that there's something going wrong, you have to go through all of this and it's super public. I don't want to do that. So, very crazy thing. And again, there's not one instance recorded in Scripture of this actually happening. So, I don't know how often it actually did happen. It would be pretty interesting to learn. What do we learn about God in this chapter? He demands honesty. Ooh, I didn't even have that one on here, but yes. And that goes both for kind of the second and third things he talks about. He demands honesty. Actually, even honestly, the first one, because he wants them to be honest about the fact that they've got something physically wrong with them. You have to be honest about the fact that you got the runs, okay? Don't hide it. What else do we learn about God here? He can't live with their defilement. So he lives separate and he dwells in perfection. He separates and he dwells in perfection. He cares about hygiene. And not just, like, hygiene is like washing yourself physically. You know what? Going up and, like talking with someone, getting over a problem with you have, that is like a relational shower. It's just like, hey, we're good. We're all cleaned up now. But yeah, he cares about hygiene. He does. And again, the people wouldn't necessarily know that like this kind of hygiene stuff leads to these specific diseases. Is there anything else we see about God? He's a God of restitution. He is also the oath maker. We see that with the priest before the woman. He makes an oath with her before God. He is the oath maker. What do we notice about people in this chapter? Well, I'm going to put up defiled because we have that up there. Like each of these talks about defilement. They are defiled people. They are disgusting and dirty and gross. There's 2 million people, okay? It's going to happen. Over 2 million. What else do we see about people, though? They're unfaithful. They can't even be trusted to say that they're sick. They can't be trusted to go and give somebody back something that they borrowed. What else? I wrote breaks faith, so that goes there with that very well. When it is in the interpersonal relationships, it goes through this whole like step process that people should do. So I'm actually going to write all of those down really quick. So he specifically tells them that if you commit a sin, you should realize your guilt, confess, and gain restitution with them so that I may atone you. So there's like a whole thing in there. So they're sinful, they're guilty, and they realize they're guilty, and so they confess and they seek restitution. And that is in that, like, I think it's only like a paragraph long. That second thing is only like a paragraph long. And that whole step process, which we actually end up kind of seeing a little more in depth in what Paul says about, like, if a brother is sinning, what you should do. But it's very similar of, like, hey, there are steps to go through this. When you realize that you've done something wrong, and if you realize that somebody in the congregation is doing something wrong. Does anybody have anything else about man? Otherwise, we will move on to observation. All right, I'm going to move on to observation. I am ready. Infidelity test with an exclamation mark, because it is weird. It's so weird. Infidelity test. Yeah, honestly, it's got like all the steps of like a witch testing. It's like it's so detailed. It's like, are we trying to figure out if she was unfaithful or if this person's a witch? So. Oh, just a minute ago? Pretty soon they're going to like throw her in the water, see if she floats. So I think especially with the like whole washing the paper in like the like mixture of dust and water and then making them drink it is kind of an odd thing. Yeah. No one gets burned at the stake though. At least there's that. Which we actually see take place in David and what is the name of Bathsheba's husband? Uriah the Hittite. Because he goes to her family and he restitutes before God. But he goes a step further. He is supposed to just restitute with God. He restitutes with the family as well, as best as he can. I mean, there's not much you could do if like you're the reason like a mom's son died, but at least she knows why. So, all right. And my application here was seek restitution for any defilement. Okay, so God has gotten past the organization. Now he's saying, okay, if we're all going to live together, you guys need to understand something. There are going to be times that you defile yourselves. You get sick. You fall into some kind of sin, okay? Seek restitution when you get defiled. Seek restitution for any defilement. Yeah, because this is if you are defiled. You don't have to be. Guard your heart. All right. Mm-hmm. No. And technically, what it ends up actually being is that one of two things happen. Is that like either the woman is completely barren, or if she is unfaithful, every time she does have a kid, it is a miscarriage. And to compare that to abortion is just insane. Again, if we look at the story of David, which kind of falls under this whole sexual defilement thing, Bathsheba was pregnant, and that was the whole reason why he was trying to cover it up. And the baby dies. God was gracious because of how David responded, that like Bathsheba still was able to have kids. But that baby died because of that. That wasn't her choice, and that hurt him like nothing else. David was an uber family man. If you look at how everything goes, he is an uber family man. He plays a little bit of favorites, but he's a huge family man. And it tears him to the core when the baby dies. But yeah, that's just. It might be. I know he is doing some like drastic measures when the whole thing happens, because God has already told him it's going to happen, but he just wants to present himself as best as he could possibly, if he could. Yep. So I'm just gonna, because we talked about it a little bit, I'm just gonna put abortion here. God is not a God of abortion. Okay, it is a terrible thing. God will use the things of this world. War is not something God wants. He will use war. He will use so many broken things for his plan. But his purpose is not for a child to not be born. All right, number 6. We have the Nazirite vow. Who's the most famous Nazirite in the Bible? That's a Nazarene. So a Nazirite is not someone from Nazareth. A Nazarene is from Nazareth. A Nazirite is someone who has set themselves apart for God. A couple of times we actually have it where God says, hey, you have to be a Nazirite. So there is a specific person who ends up being a judge that does not choose to be a Nazirite. Samson. Samson is a Nazirite, and his parents are told by God that he is supposed to be. And it is when he breaks his Nazirite vows that he no longer has his strength. So, what is a Nazirite? A Nazirite is someone who chooses to separate themselves in order to dedicate themselves to God. And it usually was for a specific period of time. So, okay, every year we have prayer and fasting in the beginning of the year, right? Now, have you ever taken a personal time of fasting because you had a big decision coming up? That's more of what this is like. They are saying, we're not going to indulge in certain things because there's something big going on, and I need to dedicate myself to God for a time. And in this, they would have no wine, nothing to do with any sort of grapes whatsoever, okay? They would not cut their hair, and this is more of like an outward sign of dishevelment. For men, it was more focused on the beard, And for women, it was more of they would not put their hair up and they would not tend to it. They would just let it go. So when it's saying that they have no care for their hair, that they're just supposed to let it grow, it is one of those where it's like you let it go wild because in this moment, your beauty doesn't matter. Your prestige doesn't matter. You're saying, God, I care more about you than what people see visually. They're going to see a disheveled man or woman, but I am for you, and I need you in this moment. And the third thing is they're not supposed to touch. So no Israelite's supposed to touch any dead thing. A Nazarite's not even supposed to get close to the point where God realizes, okay, sometimes things are going to die near you, and you're not going to have an option about it. Like, you might be sitting next to Aunt Mildred, and she just croaks, okay? And it's not your fault, but you just happen to be 2 seats away. And so there is a whole like plan of like, okay, if you had a Nazarite vow and you ended up near something, even if it wasn't of your own choosing, that was dead, you have to go through this process and then restart your vow. This only cleans the previous vow. It does not fulfill it. And then even when they fulfilled the vow, even when they've gone the period of time they did to dedicate themselves to God, they have to end it with a special sacrifice at the temple. They bring a special sacrifice to God. I have never dived deep into the Nazarites, but this is kind of cool looking at it. And anybody could have been a Nazarite. Anybody. It's just, hey, there's something big in my life. You might have had a Nazarite who was a young man who wanted to know God's plan for his marriage. And he took a Nazarite vow for a time, okay? You might have a village leader who has to make a big decision about something in a few weeks, and they take a Nazarite vow. So it was a special vow that you would take for a period of time to dedicate yourself to God. And like I said, there are a couple instances in the Bible where God, just like with the Levites don't choose to be the priests. God just says, you're my priest. In the same way, there are a couple times that God just goes, just like with the prophets, like, hey, you're my prophet. And Jeremiah's like, well, I don't like it. And he's like, too bad. In the same way, there's a couple of people that he goes, hey, you're a Nazarite. And they're like, I don't get to drink any wine. Nope, you're a Nazarite. Thank you. Oh, he hated that. He did not want to do that. Yeah. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, a couple chapters ago when they were camping around the outside of the tabernacle. So remember how Judah was on the east? There is a family of Levi on the north, south, and west, but the only people camped to the east is Moses and Aaron. The only people camped at the entrance to the tabernacle is Moses and Aaron. So I thought that was very interesting. So, which also makes sense because their job and what they need to do is the first in marching, because they have to go in and cover everything before the Kohathites can come in and move everything. All right, so what do we see about God in this chapter about Nazarite vows? I think we could start with just saying God is the God of vows. We can start with that. He is the vow maker. What else do we see about who God is? One thing that I do see from here is that he cares about the things that people can't control. The fact that he sets up this whole thing of like, hey, there's going to be times when this is going to come up, and it wasn't your fault that this happened. But he cares about what you can't control. And the other thing about God that I think really comes from this chapter is actually the one thing I didn't put up there, because there's a very, very small blessing at the end of this chapter. It's actually a blessing that most of us probably know, because there's so many songs with this blessing in it. So I'm just going to put verses 24 to 26, and I'm going to read them in just a second. But God does all these things that are listed in 24 to 26. Okay, this is who God is. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. And God does all those things. And he is all those things. What about man? What do we see about man in this chapter? What does man do? Other than, again, they make vows. What does man do in this chapter, or what are they like? They express their devotion. They express devotion. And in that expressing of devotion, they separate themselves from pleasures. And you might not think being around a dead body is a pleasure, but what happens if someone you care about dies and you're in the middle of a Nazarite vow? I want to be at that funeral, but I have to deny myself that pleasure because I'm in the middle of a vow that I have taken. Let the dead bury themselves. Although that dude is probably talking about the fact that his dad is not dead yet, and he's just kind of waiting, and he's like, in a couple of years, I'll follow you. And, yeah, there's a lot going on behind the scenes with, like, how he's saying that. But, at the very end, Aaron is the one pronouncing this blessing, so people bless. And people are Nazarites. I'll just write Nazarites up there. For observation, I had this whole sentence that God cares about what you can't control as an observation as well. Like, that is really cool because it is shown in this specific instance, but that is just God in general. He cares about what you can't control. And there's a lot that you can't control. Does anybody else have any other observations or questions? This actually might be a chapter that would have a lot of questions just because, like, a Nazarite vow is kind of a weird thing. We don't really do it. Again, like, the closest thing we have is taking a, like, special time of prayer and fasting and devotion to God because we have something that's come up. So,
at first, I was not sure why the Nazarite vow was there, but you kind of explained it earlier, of it kind of seeing it as like this was a time of fasting or separation, because it just kind of like appears out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. Like, this is what you do. I'm like, where did this even come from or start from, or when do they end it? Because there's not really any clarification on that. So it's like, could somebody just be like, yeah, I was a Nazarite for a couple of days, took a vow to be a Nazarite for a couple of days, or if it's a lifetime devotion or what?
There would be both. But just like the priests that are boasting about themselves in Jesus' day, if a man is boasting about being a Nazarite, that's his reward. So, but there were some that were like their whole life is a Nazarite vow. I don't remember if it specifically states John the Baptist took a Nazarite vow, but the way he lives is very similar to one. And that would have been a life, like it wouldn't necessarily have been lifelong, but like adult ministry on. Like, the moment he took the vow, he had it until he was dead. And there would have been a good amount of people that took a Nazarite vow that was their whole focus. Is just like, maybe you have a person who ended up in charge of a town, and he just feels that he needs to dedicate himself to God to do the best job. And so his whole life, he lives under that Nazarite vow. And I don't know if they would have needed to give that offering before they died. I would have to look into that. maybe it would have been possible to do it by proxy of like basically in their will saying, hey, when I die, just make sure to go give this to the temple. So, yeah, but yeah, the Bible is not a legal document, so I can't go to Article 7, subsection B, and figure out everything. So there's gonna be some things I'm gonna have to ask God when I get to heaven, and it would be cool to talk with someone who had a Nazirite vow and just be like, hey, how did that whole thing go? But yes. And I actually like that you brought that up, because it is interesting in everything else in these 7 chapters that this is here when he's talking about how the whole town should live. And what he is kind of saying here is that, like, hey, this isn't for everyone, but you have the ability to separate yourself from me if things come up. If there is something amongst you that is bigger than you can handle, separate yourselves from me. Yes. So a good example would be Hannah, when she finally has Samuel. I don't think it specifically says, but that is in like an instance where someone might have done a Nazirite vow, especially a woman, of like thanksgiving of like he provided. And I want to show my dedication for what he provided for me. So, and again, interestingly, God is saying to do it as like a declaration, but it can go too far to where it's just like an outward sign, and it's just like, ho, ho, look at me. I'm so awesome because I took this vow and I did this. And that's not the point of it. All right. Finally, we have gifts at the temple consecration. So, the temple is consecrated by Moses, and the moment it is finished, there are gifts of oxen and carts from the tribes, equally from the tribes, that is given for moving stuff for the tabernacle. Some of these are given, I think it's like 4 of them are given to the guys moving pillars, and 2 of them are given to the guys with the cloth, and then the guys with the furniture just have to carry it by hand. Those poor guys. And then after that, there is a generous gift offering that is given. The gift offering is a combination of money, so they give a certain amount of gold, flour, oil, precious metal dishes, like gold and silver dishes, and sacrifices. Every tribe, no matter how big or small, which if you saw, some of the tribes were like 3 times as, like the biggest tribe was like 3 times as big as the smallest one. But they all gave the same thing. Nothing was different amongst them. And then the tribes gave in the order that they marched and the order they were listed for where they should camp. So they go by the order they march. They're very orderly in giving their gifts. And at the very end of the chapter, the gifts are totaled up, and it's we got this much and this much and this much and this much. So what do we see about God here? He is very orderly. He is so orderly. That is just the thing going through this whole thing. Everything is ordered, and we will see in a moment why. But it is incredibly orderly. Which you wouldn't expect in a document this old necessarily. To have everything set out this orderly. He is worthy of gifts. He is a God of beauty. Again, I think I said this in the past. there are 4 things that just, the whole concept is just, it is who God is. God is love, he is truth, he is goodness, and he is beauty. Anything that is any of those is him. But he is, he loves beauty. And so he is bougie because he loves beauty, and he is the author and creator of beauty. He redistributes the blessings given to him, because everything is given to him, and then he gives it back out for ministry. So he redistributes blessing. What about man? I have a little bit I want to share, and we're already at 7:30, so I'm going to go a little faster through this chapter. Everyone contributes to ministry. In this chapter, everyone contributes to it. Everyone contributes to ministry. Interestingly, there's a very, very, very small group of people that do not tithe in the Pentateuch. So everyone tithes to the Levites. And then the Levites who are not performing specific priestly duties tithe of what they have as well. So only those who are of the Levite family and actively performing priestly duties don't tithe. Only those. Man offers and dedicates their things, and every single one of their offerings is dedicated to the Lord. They offer and they dedicate. My big thing that I noticed was that all the blessings were, all of the gifts were equal, no matter what the prosperity. It didn't matter how prosperous anybody was, the gifts were all equal. Did anybody else have any other observations? It is. And you know what? You know what the crazy thing is? Like, almost all of that is repeated verbatim. It's just the name of the tribe changes. And if you think about it, what is the point of doing that? Of repeating it and just changing the tribe's name? It is to get across the point of 2 things. 1, everyone is in this all together. And 2, everyone gave equally. And it's just getting that across again and again and again. It's trying to get those 2 ideas across. Yeah, but it is long. Accountability. Have accountability. They do. And in a way, that's just what it is with with salvation. When, to be saved, you just proclaim Jesus over your life and that you want to follow him and have him as your Savior. There is no difference between any people. Now, there is a difference in sanctification and becoming more and more like God between the people that, I said it when I was young and I followed God from a young age, and I've been in prison a couple times and I did this and I did that, and I've got a lot more to work through. But the salvation is the same. Everything after that is a little different, but the salvation is the same. And my application is they all gave generously. How do you make sure that everyone functions well in this whole society? Everyone gives generously to the ministry. Well, they used to, basically, they were called indulgences. You could pay to be forgiven of sin. Oh, yes. Yep. Yeah. The Catholic Church, now this wasn't this was the individual Catholic churches that were doing this. This was not what the head of the Catholic Church told them to do. But it was a huge problem of there are so many things. I love that topic. I don't want to get too into that because we're already over a little bit. So I just want to share quickly. I had a little bit I was going to read that I had written out, but I'm just going to share the couple of slides I had of, okay, this is what God did to set up the Israelites as they camped and moved and what they were supposed to look like, okay? But why does God order his people, and how is he doing it in us today in the church? Because we are not this camp moving. We are the church, the body of Christ, and there is a difference in things for us. So, to begin with, God ordered the Israelites then, and he orders us now, like organizes. How did God order the Israelites? He divided amongst their tribes. General living is declared over the whole camp, but responsibilities and positioning is given individually. And this goes ever more so with the church. Okay, they had a small camp that was like, what, 10 miles wide or something, was what you said? 12 miles wide, okay? Guess what? We span the whole earth. That's a bit bigger than 12 miles. A special tribe is set aside for him to cover for all of the firstborn. How does God organize the church? He divides the general, or what we call the universal church. Every Christian ever is the universal church. And he has divided that into local assemblies, local groups. General living is declared over all of them. We are all called to live the same way. But guess what? The fights I'm facing is different than the fights that a Christian in China is facing. Okay? We're facing different fights. Our responsibilities are going to be different. And because we're all of the priestly nation, because of everything that happens in the New Testament, we also all individually have priestly duties. We're not just to fight the specific battles around us. And how does, and he also, because we're a nation of priests, you have specific set that is set aside in each local assembly. There's a specific group of people that is set aside at each local assembly. Your pastors, your deacons, your elders. They are set aside at each of the local assemblies instead of an entire priestly nation. So basically, a pastor, an elder, a deacon is a double priest. They were already a priest because they had chosen to follow Jesus, and now they have extra priestly duties on top of it. And there is order in their camp. Why? Why does God want to create this order? To create a unified people. Okay? They need to be unified in the blood and unified in the law to get along with each other. They need to be unified in order to accomplish anything. They aren't conquering Canaan if they're not unified. He is doing it to prepare them for the battle ahead, to protect them on the way to the promised land, and to prepare them for the battle once they're there, and to ensure that the ministry is cared for. He organizes everything to make sure that the priests, the ones he has chosen to set aside, that they are cared for. And in the general populace is setting aside for the ministers. Why did God organize the church? Why does he organize us? Why doesn't he just say, hey, just do what you do? It is because he wants to create a unified people underneath the statutes and blood of Jesus. Okay? If you're a part of the church, a local church, the universal church, it is because God wants you to be unified with the people around you. You could be part of the universal church and be all off on your own in a cabin nowhere. But that's not what God wants you to do. You have responsibilities in a body. Get in a body. He wants to prepare them for a battle ahead. Guess what? Their battle was physical. Their battle was easy. I'd love to go charge Canaan. I'm a weak man. I would love to go charge Canaan rather than fight this spiritual war. Okay? But our battle is against spiritual forces. And Why is he organizing us? To prepare us for when the enemy attacks us and for the battles that we need to step forward and face. And finally, why does God order the church? To ensure that the ministry is cared for. He organizes pastors, deacons, elders to take care of the ministry, and he organizes the general populace in order to not even just give to the ministry and support them, but also to support with their abilities, because, again, we're a priestly nation now, so we could give even more than just of our livelihood. And it is a blessing that you get to do that. And if you don't exercise that blessing, you're missing out. With that, I want to leave you on that, and I will leave that slide up. And I want to pray over us tonight. And I wasn't able to read what I had set up to read. But at the end of that, I had written out a prayer to kind of go with everything we had talked about. So I just like to pray it and close. Lord, thank you that you are not a God of confusion, but a God of order and peace. Teach us to honor your order, to treasure the place you have given us in your people, and to serve with humility and faithfulness. Keep Christ at the center of your church and build us together in unity for your glory. Amen. If you would like to sign up for a specific one, I don't have little tags to take, but you could just write your name at a spot and just write a note for yourself of which ones you would like to do. I did notice that there was a couple that I had written down that actually did speak up for their specific spots. There's a pen right there.